And we feel so happy to have you. Kelis Rowe and Amanda Johnston. We want to thank Amanda, who's the ED of the Torch Literary Arts. And letters, is that what? No.
You
Arts.
said it, Torch Literary Arts.
Yeah. I'm thinking of, the other place where you did your art show. Yeah. So anyway, we're so happy to partner both with artists and with Torch. And I don't know, this might be, our 10th chapter in this journey. And we're so glad that you can come with us. If you have never been to Bookwoman a little bit, we're one of the few remaining feminist bookstores. We're the second oldest out of 4. So, and we've been around 48 years. We're looking forward to our 50th anniversary coming up. So we made our banner. So we need your support, mentally, physically, monetarily, to keep going and to continue our mission. But partnering with the community is, one of the great joys that we find. So thank you all for being here. If you need anything, come and find me. I'll make sure I can facilitate any needs you all might have. Amanda, are you going to come up and do Kelis's?
I sure am.
Tell us more about Torch.
Yes.
And, all the things you're doing, because you've been a firecracker.
We stay busy, don't we?
We stay busy.
Is it okay if I take the mask off while I'm speaking? Thank you. And so likewise while you're reading.
Okay.
Thank you all for coming. I'm so happy to see you here. Yes, I'm Amanda Johnston, founder and executive director of Torch Literary Arts. Thank you. I see some familiar faces, folks who've been out to our salon, some of our other incredible events. But right now you're here at our Wildfire Reading Series, and we are just thrilled to have you here. Like Susan mentioned, Bookwoman has been a long-time supporter of Torch Literary Arts from the very beginning in 2006. So as a feminist bookstore, a community hub, this is an excellent place to come to gather, to shop, buy your books from Bookwoman, and just support local independent bookstores in general. They need the support more than some of those online digital places need the support that we will not name. And do follow torchliteraryarts.org if you don't already. We have incredible programming like the Wildfire Reading Series. We have workshops that are open to BIPOC, non-binary writers. They're available free of charge. We have our salon along with other special events, so open mics, readings. We partner with other community organizations like the Texas Book Festival. We do things during South by Southwest. So we stay busy and supporting our mission to amplify Black women writers with intention and love. So thank you for being part of that love offering that we feed into this community of Black women writers. All right. So tonight, though, you are here for Torch is Wildfire Reading Series featuring Kelis Rowe and her debut YA novel, Finding Jupiter. Round of applause for Kelis. Central Texas own. We like to support our folks from here first. And now you can also get it in paperback, which just came out in March. Yes. So make sure you get your copy and get it autographed before you leave today.
Get one for your niece and nephew.
Makes an excellent gift. I love giving autographed books as gifts. People are so excited to see that extra special touch that they know the author signed it specifically for them or just sent it with love with their signature inscribed inside. So it does make a special gift. Torch Literary Arts is a 501c3 nonprofit. What that means is that our community and donations are our lifeblood. That's how we're able to survive and provide these services at low or no cost. So if you're able to, please make a donation. There is a QR code over on the table next to brochures and stickers. Grab some of those on your way out. But we also want to thank our funders, the Birding Johnson Foundation, the City of Austin Cultural Arts Division, the Poetry Foundation, the Austin Community Foundation Black Fund, and the National Endowment for the Arts. Thank them for their major support. And now on to our feature for this evening, Kelis Rowe. Kelis Rowe is a stay-at-home mom and former homeschooler who writes sweeping classic teen romance novels from the points of view of grounded, self-possessed black girls and black teen boys who just gotta love them. Her debut novel, Finding Jupiter, is a contemporary literary romance about a James Taylor and Beyonce fan and a champion swimmer bonding through shared grief and falling in love one fateful summer. It incorporates journal pages of art and found poetry from the pages of classic novels, including The Great Gatsby, Their Eyes Were Watching God. Kelis writes out of her suburban home near Austin, Texas. Please welcome Kelis Rowe!
Thank you, Amanda, for that great introduction. I'm so happy to be here today to talk to you guys about my book, to read a few passages from it, and just celebrate. Celebrate National Poetry Month. Finding Jupiter incorporates blackout poetry, as you just heard, and I'm so happy to be here. What I would like to do, because it is National Poetry Month, is to open my reading with the reading of a poem that I absolutely relate to. Lucille Clifton, I'm sure most of you are familiar with this poem, Won't You Celebrate With Me?
Yes.
Won't you celebrate with me what I have shaped into a kind of life? I had no model. Born in Babylon, both non-white and woman, what did I see except myself? I made it up here on this bridge between starshine and clay. My one hand holding tight the other hand. Come celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I also want to say just a little bit about who I am. I know we're going to get into some other things after my reading, but this poem resonates with me because this book is a result of me kind of carving out a kind of life for myself. I am a person who was a workhorse from the time I was old enough to work. I, started looking for jobs. I was so happy to circle, jobs in the newspaper back in the 80s as a teenager. And it was very important to me to work, to be useful, to be helpful. And even in college, I always had at least 2 jobs, sometimes 3. And when I became a mother, my son required spinal cord surgery. And so obviously that brought me home from working. And so I made my son my work. And, I poured myself into him, as many moms do. But because he had extra needs, and I needed to be extra helpful, I kind of started to fade to the background of my own life. And I homeschooled until he was in 5th grade. And at the time that he went to school, it was kind of like, for me, my background was in marketing research, and that's a field, like I'd been out of it for 10 years. It's not something that I could just jump back into. And so I had a moment where I was kind of lost because I poured so much of myself into being a homeschooler and a stay-at-home mom that when my son no longer needed me as much, I was kind of left with this, like, what can I do? Who am I? And a big part of what I did to as part of my work life was to keep a journal. At the time they were called online journals, blogs as we know them. But, and I got a lot of fulfillment from that. And people would always say, they liked my voice. When are you going to write a book? And I always thought that I would write, essays, like humor kind of essays. But what happened was I, faced with kind of disappearing when I had to put my son ahead of me. And then when he was no longer there, I kind of sunk into a little bit of a depression, trying to decide what was my purpose. What was my purpose? And so I went back to, people saying, well, why don't you start your blog again? Why don't you, And so ultimately I did decide to write a book, and this is the result of that. Finding Jupiter, yeah, it's the first book that I ever wrote. It took me 3 years, and and I thought that it was going to be the only book I wrote, so I really wanted to write something that I knew would resonate with young black kids in Memphis. It's a Memphis story, but beyond that, I wanted to contribute something that would be a different kind of mirror to black American teenagers for who they are, and a window for other people into another facet of who black American teenagers can be. So that said, It is a love story. And the thing that I love so much about teen love stories is everything is bigger than life. Like those first butterflies, it's all big. And I had my first big love as a teenager, and I'm still with him 30 years later. Yeah. And he was one of those boyfriends who was kind of like out of the 80s, like, you know, when letter writing was a thing, and it was so romantic. And so I wanted to give that kind of picture. We'll talk more about that later. So what I would love to read from this book first, I'm going to read something. It's a dual point of view novel. We hear from Orion, who is the champion swimmer, and we hear from Jupiter Moon Ray, who is you know, a girl who kind of has blocked her heart off from love. She really likes boys, but she's like, I'll just play with boys. My heart, like, you know, losing love hurts too much, basically, from what she's witnessed. So what I want to read first is from Orion's voice. This is going to be in chapter 6. Orion has already seen Ray, and it was love at first sight. So he's already head over heels in love with her, and he's a character that I enjoy writing so much because he's, you know, big and athletic and, you know, not really aware of how cute he is and kind of awkward, and he really just wants to be in love. He wants somebody to love. So I'm going to read a little bit to get us in the mind of Orion. I had so much fun writing this. He's already met her. He's sure that he's in love with her already. And his friend Mo, who is kind of like a ladies' man, you know, he's kind of his sidekick, wingman, is encouraging him to kind of show off a little bit, which Orion is a fish out of water because he's not that type of person. So I'm going to read just a little bit of a scene where he's trying to impress Ray. The solar-powered yard lights flicker on just as the sun dips behind the trees. Applause erupts when I turn the pool lights on and the pool glows neon blue. From the patio, I take a bow, turn the speaker up, and kick back on the lounger, trying not to freak out. Almost everybody we invited to night swimming is here. Amir and Nico, two of my swim team members, take turns seeing who can hold an underwater handstand the longest. Ray and Bree are nowhere in sight. I gave them a later time so they could walk in on a poppin' party. Pressure's on to show Ray that it might be fun to hang out with me again after tonight. Mo, on a scale from 1 to not interested, this girl is a solid 2. There's no more wingman than after tonight. It's time for me to fly on my own. How? I can't tell you what to do. I just be trying to kick it. You want some falling in love stuff, and that's out of my arena. Seriously? You got me this far, and you just leaving me out here? What kind of wingman are you? Mo shakes his head. Pitiful. Okay. Man, look at you. Look at this house. Profile. Post up. Stun on her. And keep her smiling. And when the time seems right, after y'all been vibing for a minute, ask her what she likes to do when she comes home in the summertime. Whatever she says, say, y'all should do it together. And the rest will happen naturally. Simple. Simple. Almost too simple. Mo's phone buzzes. She's here. I'll go get him. You be doing something Denzel like when I get back here. Remember, stunt. I'm frozen in place when Mo leaves. Stunt? What does that even mean? Okay, breathe. I throw 2 towels over one arm and grip 2 water bottles in my other hand to greet them. Nope, that's too much like a butler. I toss everything and stretch out on the lounger. Okay, I don't know what to do with my hands, so I fold them across my stomach. Nope, it's a party. I can't look like the chaperone. One of the girls screams, drawing my attention to the pool. The pool! Okay, I dive in to the middle of the pool, swim to the shallow end where everybody is. I prop my elbows up on the edge, joining in, laughing at the chicken fight. Instantly, I'm a little self-conscious posted up next to Nico, who only has to show up for girls to get them weird and giggly. He's light-skinned with a floppy curly fade. He's also a show-off, and even better with girls than Mo. And Amir is ripped. All of a sudden, I question my decision to invite half of my relay team from swim. I shake my head to clear it out and try to relax into a chill party vibe. Yo, who is white dress? Nico asks, pressing his elbow into my arm, almost pushing me over. I look up, and Mo enters the backyard with Bree and Ray. White dress? is don't worry about who she is, I say, shrugging Nico off me. You worry? Nico asks me, amused. I ignore him. Look who I found, Mo announces as they approach the pool. Okay, it's showtime. I wait until she sees me and tip my head back like, what's up? Then I push off from the wall, streamline under the water, and break the surface like a shark. I only have room to swim a couple of strokes before I get to the steps, and that's all I need. I climb out of the pool and walk a little slower than usual over to greet them. I don't get a towel on purpose. I glance at Mo, who is giving me a low-key thumbs up. I catch Ray checking me out, and my stomach flutters a little bit. My abs tighten reflexively, and Ray's braids are pulled up into a ponytail. She must have had a neck and ears and smooth skin yesterday, too, but it's like I'm seeing her for the first time all over again. A soft grin creeps across her face, and I clear my throat to mask a chuckle. And that's the end. Isn't it so cute? I love Love at First Sight because it's just so innocent and so pure. And it was fun getting into the mind of a boy who we see, in film all the time, kind of tripping over themselves. And so it was really fun getting into Orion's mindset. The next part that I'm going to read is,
Good idea.
Oh, this is Ray. She has actually fallen for Orion harder than she expected to, sooner than she expected to. And, a portion of this book is her figuring out how to trust, that love can not be painful. So a way that she works through all of her emotions related to, this new event of falling in love, but also with dealing with the loss of her father, who she actually never got to meet. He died when she was born. And she works through with art and poetry. And this summer, she's working on finding blackout poetry in Their Eyes Were Watching God and The Great Gatsby. So what I'm about to read now, it's talking about, it's her, trying to grapple with these feelings that she's having with Orion, for Orion, and also a little poetry making. So this is Ray. Bree was still asleep when I snuck up. Bree is her friend who's home from boarding school with her, visiting from the summer. Bree was still asleep when I snuck up here to the treehouse. There was just a hint of light outside, but it's brightening now, and the birds are waking up too. I'm sorry, my mouth is so dry. I need a little bit of water. Do I have some water?
Do you have some, or can I get
Do I have some?
I don't know.
I need some.
I'll get you
I'm
some.
sorry. Well, okay, I'll start over, but I forgot to mention that the treehouse is the manifestation of her father for her, because it was the one thing that he built when he found out that she was about to come into the world. He built this treehouse for the two of them, and he never got to walk inside. So it's become a place for her that's kind of sacred, and it's the place where she creates her art and poetry, and nobody's allowed inside because it's a sacred space for her. Okay, I'll start over. Bree was still asleep when I snuck up here to the treehouse. There was just a hint of light outside, but it's brightening now, and the birds are waking up too. I slept in spurts last night. I couldn't stop thinking about Orion, so sweet and innocent. Obviously a hopeful romantic. He wears his heart on his sleeve. I wish I could forget about him and leave him to find a girl who can cherish that and let herself turn into jelly and believe stupidly that their love will last forever. I'm not trying to end up like Mama, weighed down by memories, longing for a love she can hold onto about as much as she can hold sunlight in a fishnet. Stuck in a revolving door of memories and never stepping out of it. No thanks. The first poems I came across today in my journal were from Their Eyes Were Watching God, where Janie's life is about to be shattered. There are only 5 lines in the last one, so I challenged myself to find a truth. Almost instantly, I watched the words snake around the page, revealing a poem about a woman grasping hopelessly at memories of a love she can never really hold and never will again. As an experiment, I pull out my book and find the place where the sun rises for Janie, as if for the first time. She has met Tea Cake, and they've entered a flirtation. They are approaching the sweet spot of their courtship, the push and pull, the dance. Again, I find a poem quickly, and this is the poem. With a compliment, with a smile, he played her. This time, she offered him nothing. Determined to find an upbeat piece, I searched for the sweet part, the pull, but the only poem that wants to speak today is the push. Rather than my usual black shades of gray for the art, I depict the first hint of dawn in deep shades of blue. As soon as I finish, I pack up my things and head into the kitchen. The last thing I want is Bree asking to come in here. So that was just a little bit of her working through her anxiety about her feelings of love. And this next thing I'm actually going to show you, because there are her journal pages and illustrations and her poetry are scribbled inside the book, which is one of my favorite features. By now, you can see it's pretty close towards the end of the book. She's solidly in love with him, but hasn't really given herself over to him. You know, they've made the relationship physical by now, and she's just so scared. And so she finds another poem, and this is one of the inserts from Their Eyes Are Watching God. This is the poem. Convenience, love, she thought resisting thoughts. Her mind was a battle to be fought over and over again. She couldn't like any other man. He looked like love. He could be the world. And this is Orion. He's a champion swimmer, and she sketched him in her notebook. And this is one of the pages from Their Eyes Are Watching God, where I physically, found the poem. And this is just the printed out version. And those are all through the book. So that's all I wanted to share with Jupiter. And I also want to share my second book. When I sold Finding Jupiter, it was a 2-book deal. Yeah, so it's a preview. This one is a really emotional novel, and I actually tried to submit something more upbeat and plotty to my editor, and she was like, "Ma'am, this is not a Finding Jupiter follow-up. We need emotion." So this next book, we're in copy edits currently. We don't have a cover or a title yet, but I do want to read a little synopsis for y'all, and none of this is public. Like, this is like, y'all getting tea. Y'all getting tea today.
So you can get the behind the
Hey. So I did ask my agent. I was like, "Can I talk about it?" She was like, "Yes, talk about it." So this will be my next book. I'm just going to read the synopsis, and then I'll read, I'll tell you a little bit about the book, and then I'll read a scene, one of my favorite scenes. Sparkle Brown, pause. I really love celestial names, and so so my book characters will always have celestial names. Sparkle Brown feels like she's wearing a mask, playing the part of the perfect daughter, best friend, and girlfriend, but she's not okay. The trauma of discovering her uncle after his attempted suicide is like a bruise that won't heal. She blames herself for what happened that day, and her mask is starting to slip. Like getting a less than perfect grade on her essay on Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar. If she can only keep up appearances long enough to be crowned junior class Southern Belle, she'll have the blueprint for a perfect senior year, and everything will be okay again. But the night of junior prom, with 6 weeks left to go, 6 weeks of school left to go, Sparkle is crowned and then humiliated by a video of her boyfriend cheating. Exploring themes of self-harm and the destructive power of keeping secrets, Sparkle's story is ultimately an uplifting, transformative journey of self-acceptance. So that's the synopsis of what the second book is going to be about.
Wow.
And what makes this book different from other books that I've read in the space about, things like suicide prevention or self-harm is that we're reading about a girl who, cannot be diagnosed. She's not a cutter. She's not, doesn't have a diagnosis, but she's really struggling. Like she's on the precipice of something, terrible. Like she has the weight of the world on her shoulders. And so she kind of has become drawn to Sylvia Plath. Sylvia Plath was a novelist. Well, she was a novelist, but she was a poet. And she was also very severely depressed and also, suicidal. But when the main character had done the bit on the Bell Jar, she became super interested in the poet and started to find pieces of herself within this poet, but she's also in the space where she wants to fight for her life. So I'm going to read the scene. The weekend has happened, prom has happened, devastation, the video goes viral, and this girl has to go back to school on Monday. So this is the Monday morning when she wakes up. Oh, and in this book, just like in Finding Jupiter, where I have quotes from the classic novels, I also have quotes from Sylvia Plath in this one. This scene opens with a quote. "It's so much safer not to feel, not to let the world touch me." Sylvia Plath from the Unabridged Journals of Sylvia Plath. I stare into pitch blackness that gradually lifts to gray as my bedroom comes back into view. Queen must sense that I'm awake because she stretches her neck back to look at me. "Hey, Queenie," I say, and let her lick my cheek. "The sun keeps rising on my misery, girl." I scratch her behind the ears and shuffle into my bathroom. I'm shocked by my reflection in the mirror, and not just because a short lavender afro now sits atop my head where a black 17-inch blowout was just 2 long days ago. I didn't get much sleep last night. I cried until I was numb, and I have the face to prove it. Thick, arched eyebrows float above tiny, blinking hamburger buns, formerly known as my eyelids. My entire face is puffy. I'm glad I woke up before dawn because I'll need extra time to erase the sadness, a routine that I've perfected. Queen follows me downstairs, and I let her out into the backyard. I dump an ice tray into a metal bowl. When I'm back upstairs, I fill it with water and bury my face in it. I hold my breath for as long as I can. I get emotional. Break and breathe, then dunk my face again. I repeat this for about 20 minutes until my face is deflated. I don't trust myself to not burst into tears at school today, so I skip makeup and apply moisturizer, clear lip gloss, and I stand in front of my closet. What does a girl wear to school on a Monday after public humiliation over the weekend, when she has to stand next to her definitely ex-boyfriend and smile as their picture is added to Junior Prom Royalty Hall of Fame in front of people who have 100% seen her lowest moment on video on repeat? I wanted to skip school, but Teek said the best way to get everyone to move past this is to act unfazed. She even made me practice saying, "Yeah, man, that was fucked up." All chill, as if I'm talking about the Grizzlies getting a bad call in the championship game when there are 2 seconds left on the clock and they're up by 50. She said to show people that they care more than I do, and they'll keep it moving. Gia told me that I'm not obligated to perform for anyone, and to check in with myself to make sure I'm okay. Check in with myself? Sometimes I don't understand what that girl is on. I am myself. I don't need to check in. And as much as I'd love to crawl back into bed until senior year, I have to go back to school today. I have to pretend. I've gotten really good at that over the past year. It's exhausting. My new hair is all drama. Fortunately, my aunt chose just the right shade of lavender hair dye to coordinate with the light purple in our plaid navy and green school uniforms. Knowing her, this was not an accident. I rarely wear the plaids, but I have to show up different today. So I pick a powder blue polo with ruffled shoulders. I slip on wide-leg khakis, careful not to touch the bandage on my thigh, and top it with a plaid pleated ultra mini skirt. Some of the girls cut the knee-length skirts to protest the hemline restriction, and they wore them over the chinos, the approved chinos. And it was cute, so it kind of stuck. I add a silver cuff bracelet to my wrist, already full of ever-present rainbow friendship bracelets. At breakfast, my parents pretend it's a normal Monday morning. My dad makes my tea with cinnamon and vanilla creamer as usual. I slip on my Chucks, I only wear the black ones now, and grab my backpack. I reach for my car keys, just as Mama reminds me that Aunt Vi said to not leave the house without my hoops. I run upstairs and put on my huge silver earrings, and they elevate my entire look from cute to fly, just like she said they would. I'm almost back out the room when my eyes fall on the tiara. Without hesitation, I scoop it up and place it on my head. As I descend the stairs, the weight of the tiara sends an inexplicable wave of optimism through me. Suddenly, I feel like I can go through today looking everyone in the eye, not shrinking even a little bit, even when I see Zoe Batiste. But dear Black Jesus, give me strength when I see Malik. Malika's a boy. Her ex.
Oh my goodness.
And that's what I wanted to share from my books
Oh
today.
my God. Please, round of applause for Kelis Rowe. What a treat. Thank you so much for reading from Finding Jupiter and sharing that sneak peek. Y'all were here. Y'all all got the scoop. I'm clutching the pearls. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, what a story. And your writing is just so stunning. You know, I don't want to say beautiful because like that's, you know, people use that word, but it's so stunning that it is gripping. You know, what was the line from the second book? You said the sun keeps rising on my misery.
Yes.
Woo!
Yeah.
I felt that in the mirror.
Yeah.
The sun keeps rising on my misery.
Every day. Every day.
And these characters are in high school.
They're in high school. They're juniors in high school.
Oh my gosh. So, okay, y'all, I got questions. I'm going to limit my questions. I have
Okay.
more questions that I can't prepare with now
Okay.
that I heard from the new book.
Okay.
But then we'll open it up to the audience for questions too.
Kelis, do you want a chair? Are you ready?
I could probably use a chair now,
Do you
if
want
that's okay.
a short one, a tall one?
A taller one, if that's okay.
So
do you want
that one or the one with the rush on?
The taller one.
Fantastic.
Oh, here's one.
Is this one okay?
Yeah, that one's fine. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I can just
Okay.
yeah. So I wanted to ask first, like, there is humor in your writing too. Okay, so and that is not an easy thing to pull off. What did you draw on for inspiration to add humor to these characters' lives?
Thank you for saying that. So earlier when I talked about writing a blog, my blog was actually humorous accounts of what was happening in my life. Like, y'all won't believe what happened in Walmart today kind of thing.
Okay.
And when people would ask me, you know, what kind of, you know, will you write a book, I always thought I would write those humor essays. My sister used to joke that I would, you know, I would be the black David Sedaris.
I love David Sedaris.
Yeah, like he writes these funny essays that are kind of, you know, it's creative nonfiction.
Mm-hmm.
So loosely based on true accounts, and that's what I always thought I would do. And I also thought that when I wrote YA that I was going to write more of the, you know, high commercial, like plotty, kind of funny, quick moving plot type books. But when I sat down to write, like that's not what came out. And so I actually had hoped to, you know, depart from writing from heavier topics for teenagers. Mm-hmm. But it was really hard to do. And when I knew that I was going to write a book about this girl who has, you know, this, you know, negative outlook on love, I knew that I was going to have to go deeper. So it was really important to add those lighter moments to make it easier for people to digest, people who, you know, relate to the main character, who might have had similar, you know, relationships or lack of relationships with their fathers, to kind of make it through the book. I saw through it as I was writing it.
Yes.
So I wanted to put a little levity and art and poetry and beauty.
It gives you a moment to breathe.
Yeah.
Right? And it's also very relatable in our real lives. You know, there's so many moments that are funny and private.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like from that excerpt that you read where we got the little view into his inner voice.
Yes.
It's like, oh no, you know, you can't look like a chaperone.
Yeah.
Oh no, don't look like a butler.
Right.
Like, and the back and forth with his friend, you know, and telling him, hey, Denzel it. You know what to do. Like, those are things that we can, you know, we can relate to because we've had similar conversations in our lives, right? So you made the book really accessible, and some in literature people will say like that's a dirty word, but I don't think that is. For me, accessibility just means that people can pick your book up, read it, and connect with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. When I you know, for my whole life, even as a teenager, because when I was a teenager, the YA space wasn't as vast as it is now. So I was reading Terry McMillan books in high school, you know, which I should not have been reading.
Different time.
But that's what was available if I wanted to open a book and see myself, or something that
Eric
felt familiar to me.
Dickey,
Yeah. So, but I picked up a book by Leander Tamani. I say this every time I open my mouth, called Calling My Name. Calling My Name. And it's this beautiful book. It's a middle grade coming of age book. But the way it's really artsy, it's written in snippets of this girl's from age 12 through her teenage years. So it's a coming of age of this Southern black girl, and it was the first time that I kind of opened a book that was for young people, but that was also like literary, and like, really had these really big ideas about spirituality and love and kind of agency and self-possession and all of that. And I thought, for a young black girl, I had these thoughts and feelings inside myself. I was 40 when I read that. And I was like, I want to give this feeling, the feeling that I had when I opened it, and I screenshot it and sent it to my best friend and was like, girl, this is us. This is us. I want to give that to girls as teenagers so they can see themselves. They can look out at the world, that all of us look out to. And when you're going through those early adolescent years, you look for a mirror. The world informs you of who you are sometimes, and it definitely informs other people who may not even know a black person of who black people are. And I just wanted to add something, to the canon of books out there for young people that was, that was literary and
I
artsy.
love that. Yes, and represent the vast diversity among us and black people, right? That's the other thing too. Like, your book is full of black love and joy. Like, that doesn't get shouted out or represented nearly enough without there also being some sharp trauma
Absolutely.
right in the middle of it. And your book is a testament to that. We are not the sum of our most traumatic parts. We are full and expressing ourselves as such. Can you talk a little bit about why you made that decision?
Absolutely. Like I said, I was 40 when I started reading, YA novels, and I was always drawn to the romance. Well, after Hunger Games, after I had my fantasy dystopia moment, I ventured into, romance. And, it's one of those things where growing up, like I said, the YA space in books wasn't vast. So, the things that I related to were the 80s romance films, all the Molly Ringwald movies, all of them. And I connected, because like I said, we look for things to connect with. And I saw myself in her characters, this insecurity and sometimes like a strength that's like right below the surface. Right. And in my college years, there was a show called My So-Called Life. And I saw myself in Angela, but I was content with that because that's what I was used to. And when I opened Leander Tumani's book, it wasn't a romance, but there was a section where the romance happened, where she flirted with the boy for the first time, and he, made her feel beautiful, for the first time. And I remembered that feeling, and so I kept looking for it. So in the YA space, there were stories where black girls were being loved, but they were not being loved by black boys. And especially the books that were being amplified at the time, getting movie deals, and etc. And I was just like, my first thought was the girls who would open Leander's book and say, ooh, that's me, but then what? And I thought about myself as a teenager growing up in Memphis, a really black city, and all I knew about love was black people, But if you look at the world, a lot of what was being promoted and amplified were biracial relationships for black American teenagers, which is fine, but there was no balance. And so when I wrote this book, it was in the early 2000s, or early to mid 2000s, and the space was kind of starting to grow. The space of like black teen romance novels was starting to grow, and I got in there, to ride that wave and to add, another voice to that. And it was just something that was important to me to make sure that we were presenting an accurate mirror of and celebrating young black love. I think we do a pretty good job of celebrating, adult black love. Like, you think about all that whole, all the romance movies that we're familiar with, like Love Jones, etc. And even now in the romance space, I think we do a pretty good job celebrating adult black love. But what can teenagers look to like, root for the love triangle, or, root for this relationship communally with people outside of our, our race? And so it was really important to me to do that and to create that kind of mirror in everything I write.
Yes. Representation and visibility and black love matters.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
So now hearing a sneak peek into the new book, so
Yes.
you all know when you see the title and you see the book before, you can be like, I was there, a book woman before it even had a title and a cover. But now, you know, we start in a really rough place
Yeah.
with our protagonist, right?
Yeah.
That, I mean, woo, talk about a gut punch, you know.
You know.
We can, I think, all remember the awkward times of, you know, being in school, in high school, let alone having something so public happen, and how she's, you know, preparing herself to face that, but we know it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
So comparing this book to, you know, after a book that's full of black love and that to dealing with some really heavy issues and a very public traumatic experience, what's your, you know, intention in sharing that side of the story with your readers?
Like I said, when I knew that I was going to write for a young Black American teenage story, actually initially I was going to self-publish for all the reasons I said, because publishing wasn't checking for books like that.
And it's
but
still,
it was a book.
It's still not where it should be.
It's growing, but
It's growing, but there's a
the
lot
books that are
of
being
them.
amplified are not, you know, these types of books, which is why I will always write them, because I don't write for amplification.
Thank you.
I write
Thank
for,
you.
you know, for who gets it. I
Yes.
write for, you know, the people who open the pages. But it was important to me to put the humanity of young Black American teenagers front and center. And part of that, we talked previously on another time, part of the reason is because I had, you know, at the time an adolescent son, he's 16 now, and, you know, he would get his reading lists from school, and when he was in, I think it was 9th grade, maybe it was his freshman year in high school, the reading list came home from English, and, you know, great titles, but every title that had a black face on the front was about racism. Even a fantasy novel that had a black person was about racism. And compared to the other novels, which showed all kinds of experiences, you know, and adventures that these young people were having. And so I responded to the English teacher and I told her, you know, don't make those books available to my son. My son is very well read. We have all those books at home. You know, he'd already read them actually, and he reads widely. But in school, especially a school where he's a minority, I didn't want him to walk through the world, you know, kind of understanding his differences, and also I call it being subject to being in this space and only being fed the trauma.
Right.
You know, when there's so many other stories that could be told. And the English teacher agreed with me that they needed to do better, you know, so if I can help one teacher, you know. I lost my train of thought.
So you made this book available on your son's reading list.
So I wanted to put the humanity of young Black American teenagers on front and center. And to me that meant taking their challenge, you know, the challenge that was presented in the book, the emotional journey, sometimes even the physical journey, and taking it out of, I feel like there's a comfort zone for the kinds of stories that, you know, massively their readers will read. You know, the masses will gravitate towards a book about young Black American teenagers that is centered in trauma, race-based trauma, you know, physical trauma, like, you know, rape survivors, etc. And there's just something to me that felt like, you know, we entertain ourselves a lot with that. And so the reason why in Finding Jupiter they deal with grief and they deal with you know, challenging relationships between fathers, the absence of, you know, love in Ray's case. In Orion's case, the love is present, but it's complicated because he's trying to figure out, do you only love me because I'm a star athlete? Like, what if I wasn't? Would you still? And so those are complicated things that we all deal with, but I wanted to tell that story from the lens of Black kids because the messages Black kids feel, you know, we're not always fighting for justice. Sometimes we're just fighting for our lives, you know? And
just existing is enough.
Yeah, right.
And we have access to the full range of human emotion
Absolutely, and experience, exactly. Yeah, so that's why, you know, this book is a little heavier than I had intended it to be, but my editor kept telling me dig deeper. And, the thing that, resonates with Finding Jupiter for me, I grew up in a home where my father was present, but he's emotionally absent. Mm-hmm. And, so I grew up thinking I'm okay, but it's like, it manifests itself in a lot of different ways. And in some ways it's like abandonment, even though your dad's at home, Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to really explore that. Mm-hmm. And so likewise with this one, the topics in this book have touched me personally. And I feel like that thread of wanting to give young people, depictions and wisdom that I've learned as a former teenager, mm-hmm. These lessons, experiences, kinds of insights, it gives me a sense of purpose with my writing. I wish I was cool enough to write for entertainment and just like come up with cool stories and page turners, but it's important to me that these books are impactful to people who are young and people who were young, who might have gone through these things and not processed.
I love YA.
Yeah.
I read children's books. I read YA novels. I love a good story.
Yeah.
And what you have here are compelling, intriguing, and inspiring stories. Was it James Baldwin said that, you think your pain is your own and no one else's experience until you read someone else's pain. And
love
so
that.
it makes that connection, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing that literature can offer. So my last question before we open up to the audience.
Okay.
These are literary works of art,
mm-hmm.
right? And you bring in those references to some of the classics,
Yes.
which are also very canonized too, right?
Yes.
So I have some ideas, but I want to project
Okay.
those. I would love to hear from you
Yeah.
as to why you chose to bring in, Toni Morrison's Eyes Will Watch
Yeah.
You Die, Great Gatsby,
Mm-hmm.
and now we're hearing Bell Jar in
Yeah.
the next book.
Yeah.
What was your reasoning behind that?
Yeah, and there's another classic in here too. I don't want to spoil it, but if I say it, you'll kind of get ideas. But there's another Black authored classic in Finding Jupiter as well. This is why. So when I wrote Finding Jupiter, I was going to self-publish it on Amazon and, hand sell it to anybody who wanted to know I wrote a book. And so what I wanted to do was put everything in it that helped me as a teenager survive my teenage years. I was an introvert. I was a loner in high school. And I really, my best friend just arrived. And I really, had this rich inner life that I kind of survived every day at school was survival for, an introvert with social anxiety. So I had journals, I would write poetry and create art. And so I lost my train of thought again.
No, the classics.
The classics.
Yes.
And the other thing that helped me survive was, reading. And like I said, we didn't have a YA space.
Right.
And I was always in these, advanced English classes, and I always look forward to those reading lists,
Mm-hmm.
And The Great Gatsby was a book that I read. It was the first, I always read whatever I can put my hands on, but The Great Gatsby was the first book that I read that made me kind of feel emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was really upset with the, some of the characters, and I had so much empathy, for Jay Gatsby, and it was the first time that I felt something beyond the pages of a book. Mm-hmm. And so The Great Gatsby was a book that turned me into a reader who looked for experiences, a reader who read for pleasure.
Oh, wow.
And so I wanted to include it because I feel like kids should read it. It's one of those classics that's been redone so many times and created, into movies and things. But it's one of those books that I just think, kids should always read.
So you're also making an introduction too, in some ways. So
Right.
for readers who have not read those books yet, that might spark an interest to be like, oh, wait a minute, they're mentioning this book in here. Maybe I'll go and check that book out too, and diversify, your reading. So I thought that was one of the things that I thought might have been happening there.
My editor actually, Phoebe Ye is my editor at Random House, and she acquires books that can also have educational value, which is why my book sold at auction to her. Like she really wanted it.
For y'all to know, that meant a lot of people wanted this book. They wanted to publish this book. No, yes, that is a flex.
It was a big five. It was a 7-way big five.
Woo! That is awesome. Yes.
But so so she really wanted books that had educational value, not just to sell the book. I mean, obviously it's business, but also because these books, The Great Gatsby is like one of the most taught books. And when you go circle back to a kid like my son, who's in a classroom that doesn't have, a lot of other black kids, and that, they might be reading The Great Gatsby, teachers can reach for this book as a companion novel and say, assign reading from that book too, to kind of make sure that, black kids aren't feeling invisible or erased. So that's another reason. And like with this next book, The Bell Jar, same thing.
Okay, so I lied. I have one more question. The blackout poetry,
Yes.
right? So, okay, so you're a poet. Yes, I need you to claim that.
Okay.
Because you got these incredible blackout poems in it that you created.
And there's another a spoken word piece on date night that's in there as well.
Yeah. So talk to us about your relationship, and it is National Poetry Month again. So happy National Poetry Month. But your relationship to poetry and having that be a part of this YA novel.
Yeah. Like I said, as a teenager, when I was not talking to anybody at school and like going into the theater at lunchtime, there was an English teacher who would be present in the theater, so kids who didn't want to be social could come in and just be. And some kids would come in and perform things. Some people would actually recite poetry. I never did it, but I always had, journals. And I lost my train of thought again.
Could there be a book of poetry?
You know what?
Kelis Rowe's future?
Okay, so originally when I was doing Finding Jupiter, I thought I was going to write all original poetry in it. Like all the places where you see the blackout poetry, in the very early stages it was going to be original. I'm not sure if I
put a pin in it. Just let that idea float around, because clearly you have a gift. I'm just going to put that out there.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, audience questions. Any questions for Kelis Rowe?
So in Finding Jupiter, the scene that you had read off from us when they were at the pool party, that exchange between the young men, right, giving that advice about how you interact and stuff.
Yeah.
Did you have like a specific intent going into like the young male friendships and like how that evolved?
The friendship between Mo and Orion. Well, it was important to me to show a friendship that was pure and real. And there are other places in the book where you see how deep their friendship is. The main thing I wanted to show, Mo was kind of like the comedic, the character. You saw how funny he was in that scene. And I really wanted somebody to play off of Orion, who was, this character. Actually, both characters are kind of atypical for, for NYA. When you see, a super tall, handsome, jock, he's portrayed in a certain way. Especially when he's a black character. So it was just important to me to show. I just, like I said, I wanted to write something that was upbeat and light and airy. So I had to find those moments to do that in a book that was kind of heavy. Yeah. Thank you.
Great question. Yes.
How did you decide on selecting names?
Oh man, I spent so much of my childhood stargazing. My house was very loud. Very loud house. Sometimes it was joyful noise and sometimes it wasn't. So I spent a lot of time at the foot of my driveway stargazing. Kind of wondering what's up there, where do I fit in? Is somebody coming to get me? Do I belong here? Where are my people? These really deep real thoughts. And I loved, I just felt so grounded being outside. And so that's actually a part of my life. I'm very interested in, what's happening with us and the stars. And so, like I said, with Finding Jupiter, I thought it was going to be the only book I ever wrote. I was going to self-publish it. I was like, everything I love, I made a list. I'm putting it in there. Poetry, art, woo-woo, all of that. And so, yes, that's why I chose the celestial names, because I wanted to explore that. And even in the second book with Sparkle, I'm gonna keep it going.
Well, it sounds like there might be a sci-fi book coming up too.
Possibly. I don't know. Anything is possible.
A novel in verse.
Anything
We're gonna
is
go
possible.
out into another galaxy. I mean, if anybody can do it, you can do it.
Thank you for saying that. At the very least, we'll help young people who look up and wonder.
Look up and wonder.
In every book.
Look at that.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
At what point did you notice book 2 had to come out?
Well, this is a story that I will tell because, like I said, I was going to write this book, and I was going to be a person who wrote a book and published it on Amazon. But with what happened was I had finished the book, and there was a contest on Twitter that rolled around, Pitch Wars. It doesn't exist anymore. But it was a contest where the industry, the literary agents would follow this hashtag, and people would pitch their books in 40 characters or less. And I had a lot of success with that. I had 27 agents who wanted to see what I'd written. You know. And so what happened was, this also happened right after George Floyd's murder. And you know, after something like that, you know, we all kind of look inside. America looks inside. And the entertainment industry and publishing realized that we entertain ourselves a lot with black trauma. So that when people see a police officer sitting on a black man, we see that all the time. And, you know, a lot of people are, well, he must have done something wrong. What did he do? They do not see his humanity, right? And so at the time, is one of the reasons why my book was so popular, because we realized that we entertain ourselves a lot with trauma. And so we needed to balance out the stories that we tell about black people so that we would see black people, not just, you know, objectify them in these situations. What was the question?
The second book, when did you know the second book?
So, when I got a 2-book deal. They offered me a 2-book deal.
We paused again for
And
that.
I
I'm
didn't-
sorry. Kelis Rowe just told y'all she went from I'm gonna self-publish this book and sell it myself to a 7-way auction. Like
Yeah.
that is
Thank you.
incredible.
Thank you.
No, truly, and you know, I want to push that a little bit further too. So when we're talking about that, though, it's important to not stigmatize self-publishing. And I appreciate
Absolutely.
you talking
Oh,
about
yeah.
that here, because
Yeah.
we, especially black and brown writers, come from a long legacy of self-publishing and, you know, creating publishing houses, creating whole
Absolutely.
nonprofits like Torch Literary Arts
Yep.
that has an online magazine.
Yes.
So that we can do the work of celebrating our voices,
Yeah.
because this industry has not. But now we've gotten to a point that, you know, it is stigmatized. It's like, oh, if you publish it yourself, then it's not real. It's
Right.
not going to be good.
Yeah.
It's not professional. But you are standing proof that no, if you are a writer and you are writing a crafted, thoughtful, moving piece of literature, you can publish it yourself, or it can be in a 7-way deal. But not to take any of your
Right,
options
absolutely.
off the table.
Absolutely.
And one of the biggest, sorry, I'm on my little soapbox, I'm
It's
moving
okay.
on real quick. But James Patterson, you may have seen, you may be familiar with the name even if you haven't read his books, because his books are everywhere.
Yeah.
He essentially self-publishes now. He owns his own publishing company, and that's who publishes his books, is his own publishing company. And he has so many assistants now that write like the majority of the books. Like he might produce ideas or things, but then it gets developed by other writers, almost ghost writers essentially. And he is worth like $800 million or something crazy. So, but again, that's how race and class
Yes.
and all of that
Absolutely.
impact what is valuable and what is worthy. But I just appreciate you so much being candid and sharing that
Thank
you were
you.
going to self-publish
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah.
And then it found a home at random.
It did.
Which is great.
Yeah. And to finish answering, it was a 2-book deal, but I wasn't sure that I could write a second book. And I talked to I talked to my friends, but I also talked to my agent and my editor, and I was really honest with them, because I, going into this huge contract, I wanted to do a good job, and I wanted to show them that the investment they were making was a good one. And so I have a friend who's also a published author, and she was like, don't take the 2-book deal. Write, sell the book you wrote, which, for a person like me, was in hindsight was a great idea, because when you write a book like Finding Jupiter, I feel like like I drew it down from the ether. Kind of, I felt like it came through me, and I love that feeling of knowing, like when I wrote something that, and it wasn't even about at the time about selling it to a publisher. I wanted to get it on the paper, and I did that, and it was such a beautiful experience. And so now that I have the experience of writing on deadline, come up with another story and write it by this time, totally different experience. So I will say that I, if I get another 2-book deal, it's because I wrote 2 books already. Yeah, but that's why. And so this is actually the second book that I read from. Is not the next book I wrote. I wrote another one.
Oh.
That I think was great, but my editor thought it could have been aged down.
Subscribe to the newsletter. So you'll be the first to know when they're ready.
But it wasn't right for my editor, but it's not it's tabled for now, but I definitely want to try shop it around when I'm out of my contract with them. So thank you for asking.
Thank you.
All right. I think,
I have a question. The cover is beautiful, and I'm wondering, like, is that how you saw the characters? Or I just wonder, like, in your head when you were writing, like, what did you think about how they look?
Yes.
Because I think it says a lot, too, like, that they're darker skinned.
I specifically asked for them to be dark skinned. They're described that way in the book. I wanted them to be tall. Tall representation. Tall girls deserve tall boys too.
Yes.
And it was important for the girl to be darker than the boy because that's how they're described in the book. The artist is a South African artist. Her Instagram page, they found her on Instagram. Her Instagram page is full of art of black women and hair, like these beautiful, gorgeous hairstyles. Like that's her study is black women's hair. And she just does a beautiful job of it. And there's a theme in the book, a running theme of how this girl is going through this emotional journey, and she acts, she changes her hair throughout the journey. And so she's the perfect artist for this. But when this is T. When we got the images, she, she's wearing makeup, which, the main character in the book doesn't wear makeup. She's very beautiful. But her skin tone was a lot lighter, and so the only if you saw the original image, she was a lot lighter, which kind of changes. This is a Memphis girl, Memphis high school schooler. So with a lighter complexion, she read differently on the cover, and so they couldn't edit the image, so that we did the most that we could do, like to make her darker, and also she didn't really have a body. She was really skinny. Her back didn't exist at first, and I was like, "Can she get a body, please?" And so they did as much as they could do, and they gave her a body. They made her darker. Like it was the best, possible edits that we could make. But to answer your question, they're pretty close to the way I described, to the way I wanted them to be.
That's great. Thank you. I think one more question.
Yes.
Last question.
Given what we're dealing with now with banning books, could you weigh in on how your books are going to impact our students in school today?
With Finding Jupiter, I always circle back to, centering the humanity of black kids. That doesn't mean that there's no value in the books that focus on, these stories. I mean, they're being banned for a reason, right? And so there's value in those stories as well. But, I don't know. My hope is that it would just give children, the young readers in school, a mirror that also feels familiar to them. In a lot of cases, that might feel more familiar to them.
Thank you.
And I will add to that too, as a parent, that was something that was important in my household as well with my children who are grown now, but they would tell you as soon as they were able to, they had mama's library card, and then they got to get their own library card, and that was a big milestone in their lives. So knowing that these books exist, and whether they are available in the schools or available for purchase or available from libraries, they have to exist first
Right.
so that we can find them and share them with our children. So thank you for writing these incredible books and making this incredible book and the next one that's coming and the other one that is going to come out someday in future books. Thank you for
Wait,
writing
I have a question.
and sharing your work. Yes, we will
I
make an
have a
exception. We will
follow-up.
ask a question.
I have a comment first. I've never read a young adult novel, but I want to read yours.
Oh,
yes!
thank you.
The writing is so beautiful.
Thank you.
And so compelling, and these little twists are really good.
Thank you.
And but then and so as you're reading this and talking about your experience, your son's experience, the experience of Black people in schools, I'm wondering, have you spent any time in schools interacting with students who have read your books?
Yeah.
And what are some of the takeaways from that?
Yes.
Great question.
Yeah. When the book first came out, I did school visits. My school visits, because especially when the book came out almost 2 years ago. I'm a person I'm a person who wrote a book, who had stage fright and really didn't want to be in front of people talking. And teenagers scared me. Because, high school was like, I have to go back to high school. I hated high school, and I have to talk. So I decided that all my school visits were going to be blackout poetry workshops. And so it was such a rewarding time with young people, because they're so creative and they really are deep. A lot of the poetry and art that came out of those workshops was really emotional and personal for a lot of them. And so it was really great sharing space with them and sharing the book with them. I always lose my train of thought. I'm sorry. Is that the question you asked?
Well, yeah. I mean, what did they say about your book?
Oh, they loved it. My favorite visit was with the school. I actually went to this school twice, a school in Round Rock. And, when I would talk about, and the Round Rock schools are pretty diverse. So there were a handful of, Black girls with the rainbow braids. Like, they really saw themselves in Jupiter. And anytime I see a Black girl with color braids, I'm like, hey, girl, read my book. And in that particular group, when I talk about Jupiter and how she is a girl who, never knew her dad, but she heard about how much he loved her. And she saw this treehouse, which is a physical manifestation of his love. And I talked about how, growing up without a father could manifest itself in ways that could be very similar to growing up with a father who was emotionally absent or physically absent that you heard about, So these are experiences that a lot of girls share. And so when I was, talking, I heard from teenagers. And, it was resonating with them. And they weren't afraid to, show me that they were connecting. And that was, I loved it. That was, anytime I know that I'm connecting with the people who I wrote the book for, of course we want the people with jobs and money who can buy the books to buy them. But anytime I can, connect with young people and know that they get it, that they, that it resonated with them, those are really good moments. And yes, I've had a lot of those.
As you should have.
Thank you so much for sharing your work. Thank you so